What is going on, everybody? I'm AJ, and I'm going to give you guys the breakdown for UFC Vegas 25, headlined by Yuri Prochazka and Dominic Reyes. Before we get down to business, I would like to let you guys know about PrizePicks as always. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy app in the industry that allows for up to 100% instant deposit bonus on your first deposit of up to $100. You could use promo code AJ100 to receive that offer. Again, PrizePicks is a totally cool site, which is basically you versus a projection. There's no sharks, there's no fish. It's just simply you versus a projection show. So if you're one of those people that loves to play DFS, but say doesn't have access to all those like resources, those fancy resources that all those shark players use, PrizePicks is just you versus a projection. So you don't even really have to battle that, right? So totally cool. Another thing before we get down to business, Daily Fan MMA. If you guys don't already know, I teamed up with Brett Apley, and I'm really happy about the opportunity because on his website, not only do you receive all the different bets that are placed along with the breakdowns for those bets, but also a lot of just top to bottom content, breaking down each matchup from a DraftKings perspective, from a super draft perspective, from a FanDuel perspective, a lot of great stuff at dailyfanmma.com. There's a lineup optimizer. I mean, literally, I was making 150 lineups last event, and I did it so within like 30 minutes tops. So just, you make it just a few parameters and that's it. It's just literally that simple. So those are just a few of many perks that are on the dailyfanmma.com site. I really encourage you guys to check it out. Obviously right now I'm behind a paywall as far as my betting services go. And I would really encourage you guys, if you do want to access my bets, to do so via Daily Fan MMA, because you're just getting so much more additional content rather than just getting the picks. I just really feel like you guys are getting, even though you guys would get your money's worth with the picks as is, I feel like you guys are getting even more value with Daily Fan MMA. So just would like to throw that out there before we get down to business. So with that out of the way, let's just get down to business, shall we? So first fight of that, we have a fight taking place at, to my knowledge, featherweight. Even though these two have fought at bantamweight in the past, it's between Luke Sanders and Felipe Caleris. Very interesting fight. I think it's kind of this typical Luke Sanders type fight where he's just pretty much the better fighter everywhere. I think he's a better wrestler. I think he's the more physically imposing athlete. I think he's a bit better of a striker than Caleris. I think he hits harder, but we've seen time and time again with Sanders, he could be dominating a fight, and then up until a certain point, he just makes a mistake. And then gets submitted or something like that. That would be how Caleris wins this fight. I don't think Sanders is a great technical striker. He mainly operates out of the southpaw stance, where he's pretty much just trying to set up the left hand the whole time. Cool hand. He's got power in that left hand, don't get me wrong, but his striking is just very predictable, doesn't have many layers to it, but still, he's a better striker here than Caleris. Just let me give you guys some stats on Caleris, why it's kind of tough to back a fighter that, say, has these statistics, right? So in 3 UFC fights, Caleris has a 32% striking defense, and he has 34% takedown defense. He also absorbs 3.00 significant strikes per minute compared to his landing rate of 1.13 significant strikes per minute, right? So it's just tough for me to back a fighter with those sort of negative metrics. And again, even though I don't want to say bet Sanders or something like that, he's going to be my pick to win nonetheless. I tend to side with the fighter that I think is just better all around, more layers to their game. And that's just how my analysis tends to unfold. There's been calls where I get stuff like that wrong, but I generally do think that over the long haul, it sort of evens out, right? So that's my analysis. I'm picking Sanders because I think he's more physical, more athletic, better striker, fights at a higher pace, better wrestler. But again, I would be 0% surprised if these two, for whatever reason, are tangling on the ground and Caleris just locks up a submission attempt and gets Sanders to tap. I mean, we just saw it in his last fight, right, against Manus. Sanders was winning the fight. He was teeing off on Manus, and then he gets rocked, gets his back taken, and then Manus is able to get the choke. Yuri Alcantara, probably the most notable one. Sanders is beating the crap out of Alcantara, right? He gets like a 10-8 round, is outstriking Alcantara, something ridiculous. Let me just pull up the stats here just to fact check myself. So about through 1.5 rounds of the Alcantara fight, Sanders was outlanding Alcantara 134-27 on total strikes landed. But then Alcantara rolls for the knee bar in round 2 after getting totally dominated, as I pointed out here, and then gets Sanders to tap, right? So it's just tough for me to, back a fighter rather that, as far as like a betting perspective goes, to say like, hey, like, yeah, he could be dominating the fight, but at any point, like it could just kind of fall apart, right? So it's totally okay to just sit back and enjoy a fight. I always tell myself that if I do want some exposure to this fight, it would be for DFS purposes, which again, is another way to sort of get action on the card if I do not want betting action on this card, which as of right now, there's not really many, just maybe one spot that I'm eyeing. So yeah, there's that. Let's just field some questions here before we get into the next fight. What's up, Steven? Let's LFG AJ. Yeah, man. Appreciate you joining along. Love the content you and Drew are putting out, and wish you guys nothing but the best. Let's do this, man. BP is in here. What's up, BP? What's good, AJ? Bet's at work at the moment, but you have your podcast and keep up the grind, man. Yeah, dude, I appreciate you so much. Thank you, man. I appreciate you showing up, listening. Appreciate the words of encouragement and always. And let's do this, brother. Good luck. Supporting from London, England. Yeah, thank you guys so much. Yeah, London, England. Love you guys out there. Every person that I've talked to from England, you guys are super kind, super sharp. And I wish you guys nothing but the best out there. Matt is in here. What's up, Matt? What's up, brother? I'm excited. Lead me to the promised land. Yeah, let's do it, man. Yeah. I know you did well last week. Yeah, I know. I think both of us wanted Sekulic to win for some of our DFS lineups, but it is what it is, man. We put ourselves in those good spots, and sometimes they work out. But yeah, man, looking forward to continued success with you, brother. I appreciate you. So next fight, we got Iwan Kutilaba, and I'm just going to go in the order of best fight odds. I know it constantly shuffles, but I'm not going to refresh the screen, so it's going to stay consistent for now. So Iwan Kutilaba and Dustin Jacoby. So this is one of the fights I'm having a tougher time reading, full disclosure, partly because it's like metrics-wise, I think Jacoby's better. I think he's better technically, better technical striker. He's just very good at moving on the outside. He's a Factory X Muay Thai guy, so like Mike Montoya, fighters that train there, such as Chris Gutierrez. It's a very good camp. Kraus works there, back and forth a little bit between there and Glory. So I like that about Jacoby. In this matchup, though, it may seem like, it's, he's a better technical striker. He's got perhaps better cardio than Kutilaba. Maybe he could just weather the storm of Kutilaba and, win down the stretch. My hesitancy with that sort of argument, and while it certainly can happen, I don't know that's the most likely thing, is, Kutilaba is going to be a lot more physically imposing than Jacoby here. And I think that's a pretty big tell, especially at light heavyweight, right, where these guys are just so big and so strong, where you don't necessarily need to be the most technical fighter in the weight class to win fights and move your way up the ranks. You could be just a great physical athlete and just be very aggressive, a la Iwan Kutilaba, and just kind of win fights that way, right? So, and the other thing is Kutilaba is just a better wrestler, I think. I don't think Jacoby has downright bad takedown defense, but he still could be taken down, right? We saw him taken down in the Contender Series by Flores. I think Kutilaba is a better wrestler, a better athlete than Flores. I don't see why he can't take down Jacoby if he wants. I know that the hesitancy with Kutilaba is he doesn't always persistently go for takedowns. He did so very aggressively against Roundtree, and he just comes out super hot in that first round. There is a chance that maybe he doesn't, coming off his first knockout loss. It's more of a narrative than anything. There's also a chance that maybe his chin has just diminished, coming off the first knockout loss after going so many fights with showing a great chin, really, fighting all these fights at light heavyweight, never really shown to be rocked. It is a hesitancy on the Kutilaba side nonetheless. Jacoby's got more momentum. I am going to side with Jacoby just because I tend to side with the fighters that I think their cardio is more sustainable for 3 rounds, and I'm more confident that they would win a decision should it go to the scorecards, but he's not a lock. Certainly not a lock. And you guys know me. I don't really use that word ever. Kutilaba has wrestling here. He can take Jacoby down, I think. Jacoby has a tendency of giving up his back after getting taken down. I don't think Kutilaba is a huge submission threat, but it's still a liability in Jacoby's game nonetheless. And, what is Jacoby going to react with if Kutilaba does come out with his sort of berserker style and just wants to go out there and get him out of there in round 1? I mean, Jacoby, he's generally shown to be durable, but he has been stopped via strikes once in pro MMA by King Mo, also once in kickboxing, and he was also rocked in his most recent fight by Maxime Grisham, at least once. I know officially he was knocked down twice per UFCstats.com, but at least one of those times he was rocked, right? So Kutilaba, what I'm trying to say is he certainly has potential to get the finish. It wouldn't be like this, oh my goodness, crazy outcome if Kutilaba goes out here and gets the first round finish. But while I do agree with the odds being very competitive, I'm going to side with the guy that I think is the better round winner here, the better technical fighter, and that is Dustin Jacoby. But as you can probably guess, I am a bit hesitant with that pick because I don't know how he's going to react to a guy who's as physically imposing, as athletic, a guy that comes from a Sambo background in Iwan Kutilaba. So there are definitely some hesitancies on my end nonetheless on the Jacoby side. We got a few more comments in here. Matthew, what's up, Matthew? I love Jacoby here, a lot more crisp than Ian could run into a shot for sure. Yeah, man. I hear that. And that was kind of like the narrative in the Ankalaev fight, right? I mean, he was just way sharper and he had that power to really stop Kutilaba in his tracks. And I see what you're saying. I think that Jacoby could catch him with those counters. Again, a knockout wouldn't, I guess, shock me in the sense that, Kutilaba is coming off his first TKO loss. Maybe his chin is just suddenly diminished, but Jacoby, he's not like, he's shown some pop in his hands. I don't think he's as dangerous as Ankalaev, but I hear what you're saying. He could definitely catch him with those counters. He could definitely just be the sharper striker on the outside. So I hear you, brother. BP, the leg kicks that Jacoby will throw, leave him over for an overhand. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, if he doesn't set him up and he just throws him naked, Kutilaba could definitely counter him and time him with a big overhand right. So that's a very good point, BP. Watch Ank leg kick the leg of Iwan in the first round, and Iwan throws an overhand that Ank block. Yeah, that's a good point. He's just really athletic and fast as Iwan. I mean, and I think that, Ankalaev getting that win just shows, in the way that he did, just shows the ceiling on this guy, right? I mean, a lot of people are very high on Ankalaev, and I think rightfully so. I mean, we've seen what this guy's capable of for the most part, and he's got the potential to get even better. So he's coming off a win against Krylov. The future looks bright, and it's certainly not a bad loss for Kutilaba, but it still leaves me some concern in terms of like his defense and just like his whole berserker style. He just kind of reminds me of like a bully fighter almost, or a front runner. Like, he'll come out super hot, and if he doesn't finish you and you kind of stand up to him, you could just beat him down the stretch, like we saw Cannonier do. I mean, Cannonier was just kind of like walking him down with his hands completely at his waist, just totally unthreatened, and Cannonier won the latter half of the fight, right? So I totally hear what you're saying. Thank you guys for that. Let's get into the next fight. Pollyanna Patelio taking on Luanna Carolina. So full disclosure, I actually bet against Luanna Carolina when she was fighting Ariane Lipsky last time out. The odds were near pick'em, but no way am I going to bet this fight here. I've always had some concern with Carolina in terms of his striking defense. Had us just completely on the center line, chin up, just very, very susceptible to counters. That's part of the reason why I bet Lipke there. I just thought she was going to be a much sharper striker. And again, those odds were much different, much closer. But this matchup is different, obviously, with the circumstance of the odds. I still do favor Patelio on the feet. I think she's a bit better of a striker. Neither woman, I think, a great defensive grappler, but they shouldn't have to worry about that against each other in theory. I think they both want to keep it standing. I think, Carolinas could be the longer, rangier fighter here. I think she's just going to try and stick and move on the outside and just try and land volume. She does have tremendous volume. We saw that in the Priscilla Cachoeira fight. Let me just pull up some statistics here for reference. Against Priscilla Cachoeira, Luanna Carolina landed 111 significant strikes per UFCstats.com. And even in her Contender Series fight that went the full distance, 85, that's a really solid rate. Patelio's got some decent volume as well. I do favor Patelio, but no way do I want to bet this fight, guys. I mean, it's just a fight that I want nothing to do with from a betting perspective. I'm more than okay passing. My first instinct, much more often than not, is to pass rather than to bet. So I think Patelio probably wins. I think she's a better striker in a fight that's won or lost standing. But it's not like this uber, it's not like I'm uber confident in her at the current betting odds. So we'll see how it shakes out. Again, nothing to do with it from a betting perspective on my end. I wish both ladies the best of luck. So Krzysztof Yacco and Sean Strickland here. We got Strickland, pretty big favorite here. Depending on what book you look at, he could be had anywhere between -250 and -285. Looking at Sports International is the highest odds. And, it's a pretty interesting fight. I consider like Krzysztof Yacco and Eliso Di Chirico in similar sort of like tiers in terms of like they're very good at like nullifying the opposition, but they're not particularly great at like imposing themselves on the opposition. So generally their fights are pretty competitive based off of that sort of dynamic. Yacco, for instance, he absorbs 1.90 significant strikes per minute. He's got 87% takedown defense. He's a solid submission grappler. So it's generally tough to really dominate Yacco. I know he got knocked out by Hall and Tavares. Tavares was kind of pulling away in that fight, but it was a relatively competitive fight. And in the Hall fight, he was, dominating early, almost had Hall out of there, and then got tired. Hall weathered the storm, and Hall was able to take over and knock him out, right? So, but generally, Yacco doesn't get dominated usually. My concerns that I have for him is, as I alluded to, he is a low output fighter, and I don't particularly trust his cardio. The Hall fight was one thing. He even got tired against Eric Anders last time out as the fight went on. That fight wasn't fought at some crazy pace or anything like that. So that's a concern I have for Yacco. Strickland has looked good. I had my concerns for him coming off the motorcycle accident, but he looks to be in good form still. The thing with Strickland that I am not super big on is he's shown some power in his hands, but I don't think he's like the most aggressive striker. I mean, he fights at a high pace, but like when you actually like watch him fight optically, he's basically just like headhunting and almost in kind of like sparring-ish mode. Not that he's not trying or anything like that, but it just seems like, you know, he's not going full throttle for all 15 minutes. And kudos to the guy. If he did go full throttle, who knows? Maybe he'd be a contender or something like that. But, you know, it's still good enough to get him by. I mean, for crying out loud, the guy's losses in the UFC are to Kamaru Usman, Santiago Ponzinibbio, and Alezu Zaleski dos Santos. Not bad losses at all by any means. So I think in a fight that's going to be most likely won or lost standing, neither guy's that willing to pursue takedowns. And even if they wanted to on each other, they both have good takedown defense. They're both solid submission grapplers. You know, Strickland's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. So I favor Strickland on the feet. He just fights at a higher pace. I think he's a more durable fighter, and I think he hits a bit harder than Yacco. And that should be enough for him to win the aggregate of the striking exchanges. Am I super confident in him at this line? No. I mean, I'm just going to step back and enjoy it. I tend to agree with Strickland being a decent sized favorite, nothing too significant, but I tend to think he gets his hand raised. But again, I would like to stress that for me to place a bet on some of these fighters, I not only have to think that they win, but I have to think that there's some value on those betting odds. And so that's my reason for, passing there. Next fight, we've got Kai Kamaka III and TJ Brown. We've got Kamaka as the favorite. He could be had anywhere between around minus 155 to minus 176. And then we've got the comeback on Brown. He could be had anywhere between plus 120 and plus 140. Very interesting booking. They both excel as grapplers. I think Kamaka obviously showed in that UFC debut he could fight at a high pace. He's a decent boxer. He's got a low kick. Perhaps that works against Brown here. We saw Brown's leg shoot up a lot by Danny Chavez in his most recent fight. But the hesitancy I kind of have with both guys is their cardio. We've seen them both slow down more than once. You could give Kamaka a bit of a pass just because he took both of those fights, his UFC debut and that last fight against Pierce on short notice. But it is still a liability in his game nonetheless. And he's still very green as Kamaka. He just hasn't been fighting for that long. And so I can only have so much trust in a fighter that is just very inexperienced. We just haven't really seen a whole lot of him, what his ceiling's like. And now he's coming off a finish where he just got gas and, got taken down, got his back taken, and then just got ground and pounded on the ground. Brown is going to have some size on him. Brown is a solid wrestler. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. So I actually think that, and Brown is also going to have a bit of a reach advantage here, 3 to 4 inches, depending on which book you look at. He's also a switch stance striker as Brown. He's got some decent boxing combos, things like that. He could counter well. But I actually think that Brown's going to try and get this fight to the ground. Again, it was just his last fight where Kamaka was taken down, got back mounted more than once, and then Pierce was able to get a ground and pound stoppage. And so I actually am going to pick the underdog here in TJ Brown. I just trust him a bit more. I think he's going to have some physical advantages. I think that he is the fighter more likely to land takedowns. I just trust him to land more takedowns over 15 minutes of the two. I mean, when I watch Kamaka take guys down, he's not really he's utilizing the Dagestani handcuff. He's, in other words, lacing the legs. That's in general good for top position, but I don't think he's the most physically imposing top control grappler. When you actually watch him take guys down, even prior to the UFC, he's not really doing a good job of controlling them. Whereas Brown, he's not elite at that, but he's shown more consistency with controlling guys down once he gets them down. And so I just think that the more physically imposing grappler here is TJ Brown. I actually think the size advantage should help him out. And I think he's a bit better of a striker here. So that's why I'm going to side with Brown. Do I want to bet him? No, because here's the thing. And it's a philosophy that I sort of like to practice. And not that I do like to practice. And that's, I don't want to bet on fighters that have shown questionable cardio and questionable durability in the past. Why? Because they could be flawlessly winning the fight, flawlessly winning. They could be dominating the exchanges. But at any point where that time hits, where they just gas, they slow down, the opponent just takes over in rounds 2 and 3 and they lose a decision or get finished, or their durability fails them. They just get hit clean with a punch and either get knocked out and finished, or just the round swings completely and the pendulum just goes in the way of the opposition, right? This was something that, I noticed on tape. Brown gets rocked often, right? You know, in his Contender Series fight, he got rocked in one of the opening exchanges. He got rocked in his UFC debut by Jordan Griffin. He got rocked against Danny Chavez. I mean, he gets rocked every fight. I mean, I can only be so confident in a guy that gets rocked consistently. He's been stopped via strikes more than once. And his cardio has shown to be questionable as the fight goes on. He got tired in his Contender Series fight towards the end of round 2. He got tired against Jordan Griffin, right? He didn't get as tired against Chavez because, well, he wasn't really wrestling all that much. So that's just something that I like to practice. Again, I'm not saying that that's the right or wrong way to bet. I'm just saying that why I like to do it, right? So the pick is Brown. Do I want to bet him? No. I'm going to kick back and enjoy it. I do want some exposure in DFS, both sides. But this is just a fight I'm more than okay with passing. I would be 0% surprised if Kamaka wins. He fights at a high pace. I know the thing with Kamaka, though, is he doesn't have any wins by TKO KO on his resume, so maybe the threat of the knockout isn't as compelling here for Brown as it was in prior matchups. But when he gets rocked as often as he has, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing if Kamaka were to come in here and get a knockout, right? So the pick is TJ Brown to win. But no bet for me there. Gabriel Benitez taking on Jonathan Pierce. Yeah, interesting fight. I think it's going to be kind of a mismatch depending on where the fight goes. On the feet, I think that Gabriel has his number. I just think that he's much better defensively. Pierce he does not move his head off the center line. Very, very hittable is Pierce. I mean, let's pull up the stats on Pierce, right? In his UFC debut, he was rocked and finished on the ground by Joe Lozon. Even prior to that, absorbed 80 significant strikes on the Contender Series, and he absorbed 6.65 significant strikes per minute with a 46% striking defense. Those are obviously not elite metrics. He gets hit a bunch. He's going to be a taller fighter here by 4 inches, but I think that Gabriel is just a much more tactical striker with more variety, with more layers to his game, and he hits harder. So Gabriel should be able to win the aggregate of the striking exchanges and perhaps get a finish. But where Pierce imposes himself is in the grappling and wrestling realm. He's going to be bigger than Gabriel. And, I don't think, Gabriel's a downright bad defensive wrestler, but when was the last time we actually saw a fighter try and take him down? I mean, Jason Knight, who just looked, to put it bluntly, terrible in that fight. I mean, he just looked out of it. I mean, I don't know if there was the Ricardo Lamas fight just took a lot out of him, but he just did not look like the same fighter. But if we want to go back before that, against Enrique Barzola, he was taken down 9 times there against Clay Collard. Shout out to Clay Collard getting an upset win over Anthony Pettis 6 times. And again, since then, we haven't really seen somebody try and take him down with consistency. Again, I brought up the Jason Knight fight, but it was just a weird fight. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it would probably make more sense if you were to watch it. But it's a fight where I do think Pierce could land takedowns. I mean, I don't think Pierce is an elite takedown artist, but he has shown a double leg. He will double leg, that is, against the fence and a body lock in open space. And he's got a good reactive double leg in open space. Trains at fight ready. And again, he will have the size advantage here. He'll be 4 inches taller than Benitez. Pierce holds a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He looks to advance position in the top position. He could scramble well, and he looks to sink in the hooks that presented the back. And so am I going to pick Pierce? No, I just trust Benitez a bit more. I don't think Benitez is downright, again, bad defensive wrestler, but would I be so shocked to see Pierce land takedowns? No, I wouldn't, because I just brought up he was taken down several times by Barzola, several times by Collard. And since then, we haven't really seen his takedown defense tested all that much. So if Pierce is able to survive the striking exchanges, not get hurt badly or knocked out, I wouldn't be surprised to see him close distance and get underneath Gabriel's hits and take him down. I know Gabriel's been working on his defensive grappling. I posted a picture from his Instagram on my Twitter of him training with guys like Dan Ige, Islam Makhachev, Magomed Ankalaev, Umar Nurmagomedov. The list goes on, an abundance of talent. So I think that'll help him. I just don't know that guarantees that his takedown defense is going to hold up here. Because, again, the prior wrestlers that took down the prior fighters that took down Benitez aren't necessarily known for the highest level of wrestling. They don't come from the highest level pedigree. So I know Pierce doesn't either, but again, I wouldn't be shocked to see Pierce land some takedowns here based off his size advantage and based off the defensive wrestling that we have seen from Benitez in the past. So pick is Benitez, but again, Pierce does have a clear path to victory here. He can land takedowns. I wouldn't be shocked to see Pierce pull off the upset. Merab Dvalishvili and Cody Stamann, right? So this is a very interesting fight because I I think this fight is pretty close, to be honest with you. I mean, I favor Merab. I just think he pushes a higher tempo. He's got 4 inches of reach here. I think that he's a bit more dangerous of a striker. Not that I'm expecting him to get a knockout, but he's got that going in his favor. I think he's a bit more physically imposing than Cody. But these aren't like advantages that really jump off the page to me. He's not that much better of a, he's not that much better of a striker. Certainly not technically. Cody's a better technical striker. He comes from a Golden Glove. He has a Golden Gloves accolade. His boxing is crisp as Cody. He fights at a high pace. He's technical. He's defensively sound. He moves his head well. He covers up, and he's very, very durable. So this is this fight where I think that Merab is going to try and have to grind against Stamen against the fence. And I just don't think it's going to be that easy. Cody is a very good wrestler. He wrestled in college. And he's shown to be a solid wrestler in MMA. He took down Aljamain Sterling a few times. He's got 80% takedown defense. And Merab, again, I think if there are takedowns to be landed here, they would more likely come from Merab. But am I expecting a Merab dominant wrestling clinic? Not really. I mean, no. I mean, I'm not doubting Merab. The guy's tremendously talented. I thought his striking looked better than ever against Dotson. It tells me he's improving. But I don't really see him blowing Cody out, to be honest with you. I mean, again, I favor Merab, but like, do I want to bet him at this line? No. I think the fight is very close. So we'll see how it shakes out. I think that Cody could give him a stout test. I think that Cody could stuff a lot of the takedowns, and Cody's got very good cardio. We've seen him come on strong late in fights, like against Xiang Yidong, nearly got a finish there in round 3. He got submitted there against Sterling, got his back taken, but Merab hasn't shown to be a great submission grappler, not at least yet, right? He's not on that level of Aljamain Sterling submission grappling wise. And I just think that, like always, Merab's going to have a tough time controlling Cody. I mean, he hasn't been able to control down guys that aren't as physical as Cody, aren't as good a wrestlers. So I doubt that he could take down and control Cody, unless if there's just some massive adrenaline dump or something like that. I suppose it's possible, but I wouldn't necessarily say the most likely thing. So the pick here is Merab Dvalishvili. Do I agree with the odds? No, I do not. With respect, and should be a fun fight, though. It's a good measuring stick, I think, for Merab. If he passes his test in flying colors, then he's got, I mean, certainly his ceiling is already shown to be pretty high, but even more so, should he do that, it'd be even more impressive, right? So pick is going to be Merab Dvalishvili to win. Andreas Michailidis taking on KB Bueller. This is a fight, just very scarce footage here, especially on the Bueller side. Just don't know really what to expect out of the guy. I mean, he seemed to move fairly well in against low kicks, which we've seen a very viable weapon to use in the UFC, that is. But I think that Michailidis is a more dangerous striker. Michailidis, and also the thing is with Bueller, from what I could gather, he seems to excel as a submission grappler. A lot of his wins are by submission, but Michailidis is decorated in terms of BJJ. That was actually part of the reason why I bet him in his UFC debut against Bukauskas. He's actually a no-gi IBJJF champion, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He could transition well in terms of like the grappling. The scrambling ability is very good. He could easily pass to side control and things like that. But he doesn't seem to be the most threatening guy from the top position, despite the high IBJJF pedigree. And I've also seen him be not so willing to sink in the hooks if presented the back, which is a bit of a question mark considering the pedigree there. So what I'm trying to say is I don't think the most likely thing is Michailidis goes out here and gets a finish on the ground, but could he kind of offset? Could he negate, Bueller's advantage in theory based on his pedigree? Yeah, I don't see why not. And then I think we're going to get a fight that's won or lost standing. I mean, Michailidis just seems like he's got more layers. He seems more dangerous. He seems more athletic. But do I want to bet him at this line? No, because he's largely an unknown. He's been stopped via strikes more than once. And he's just a guy that I just want to see, how he pans out. I think he's reasonably well-rounded. I think he's reasonably talented. And he probably gets his hand raised here, but it is a fight that there's just a lot of unknowns here, especially on the Bueller side. Because there's just very little footage of the guy. I mean, like even Dan Hardy was saying in that UFC debut against Tom Breeze, he couldn't find any footage of him. And this is a guy that, has been in the game for so long, right? So, you can only do so much with just very limited footage on a fighter, and that's just the way it's got to be. It's okay to not be that certain on a prediction, and I'm more than okay with it. You just try your best and see what happens, and wish all the best. Lomo Lukbumi taking on Sam Hughes. Lukbumi a huge favorite here, to the surprise of some, taking on Hughes. Lukbumi can be had anywhere between minus 350 and minus 400. The comeback on Hughes can be had anywhere between plus 260 and plus 325. Here's the thing about this matchup, and I think why people are a little bit perplexed as to why Luke Boomy is a bit of a big favorite is, we're just not used to seeing a fighter like her that big of a favorite, right? Like, we're kind of accustomed to like the historical odds, and she's been lying closely in her previous fights. But this is a fight where I tend to agree with her being a big favorite here. I mean, I have questions about Luke Boomy's defensive grappling. She's been taken down in pretty much every UFC fight. She got her back taken by Jin Yu Frey. She's been submitted as recently as 2018. We saw her threatened by Angela Hill's guard. I have questions about Luke Boomy's defensive grappling, no doubt about it. But this is a fight that I think is going to be won or lost on the feet. Hughes also is comfortable as a striker. Hughes, in one of her losses, she was beating Vanessa Demopoulos and then gets submitted from Demopoulos' guard, right? That tells me that, her grappling game isn't the most polished if you're getting submitted from an opposition's guard. Their submission grappling, that isn't as polished. She also hasn't shown the most willingness to go for takedowns, right? So, and she has a guillotine choke win as recently as her most recent win prior to the UFC, but it came from a submission in the clinch. It's not like she has this game where she just takes down the opposition, passes the guard, and just gets a submission, right? It's not a very process-oriented game. So I don't know that I could count on Hughes to go out here and try and look for takedowns and get a submission. But she will have some size on Luke Boomy. She will be a few inches taller than her, a few inches of reach. And Luke Boomy is a former atomweight, right? But she's fighting at 115 kind of by default because the UFC does not have a 105-pound weight class. The lowest weight class they have is 115. But in a fight that's won or lost standing, I favor Luke Boomy. She's just a much more technical striker, the Tiger Muay Thai product, if you will, more technical, more variety with her strikes. She fights at a higher pace. She's better defensively. She fights much better at range. Her distance management is very good. And that should help her win the aggregate of the striking exchanges. Hughes, I know that UFC debut was against Tisha Torres, a very proven, very good fighter. But, every time Torres wanted to get off on a combo, she pretty much landed on Hughes, right? So I think that the opportunities to land for Luke Boomy will be there. I think that she most likely does so in a decision manner just because she's generally a decision fighter. But I guess I wouldn't be totally shocked to see her get a finish. Hughes was stopped as recently as that last fight against Torres. She's apparently broken her orbital more than once, which is a concern that I have for sure. But as far as the prediction goes, I think Luke Boomy rolls here. I just think in a fight that's won or lost standing, she's just much better striker. Again, technically, defensively, output, variety. She checks all those boxes. So I'm willing to predict her to win. Cub Swanson taking on Giga Chikaze. We have Swanson here as the underdog. Depending on what book you look at, it could be had anywhere between plus 120 and plus 145. We've got Chikaze. He could be had anywhere between minus 153 and minus 182. Here's the thing about this matchup. I do definitely have some hesitancies about Chikaze long-term, not so much in this matchup, but I'm still not ready to say he's a polished defensive grappler. Like, yeah, it's looked a bit better since the Contender Series fight, but it wasn't that long ago where Austin Springer was taking him down and just dominating him on the mat and ended up getting a finish. We even saw kind of glimpses of that against Jamal Emmers. When Jamal Emmers wanted to take down Chikaze and got him down, he was able to take him down and control him, right? Chikaze, again, a very, very, very good kickboxer, comes from a kickboxing background, has been striking ever since he was a kid. Very good technically. His defense is good, but his output is low, and he tends to fatigue as the fight progresses if you push a pace on him, if you impose your grappling on him. We saw Emmers actually outstrike him in round 3, in part because Chikaze was tired. And so, again, I think Chikaze is a very skilled striker. I think that him training at King's MMA with the likes of Beneil Dariush, Marvin Vettori, Kelvin Gastelum, the list goes on and on. I think that's only going to go better for his career. But this is a matchup that potentially could pose some problems for him. Again, Swanson's weakness has never really been his striking, right? It's been guys that want to take him down and kind of, are better submission grapplers than him and end up getting a finish. And with this fight, again, I favor Chikaze on the feet. He's younger. I think he's going to be a bit sharper. I think he's more technical. But Swanson's a very good striker himself. He fights at a high pace, good head movement. Swanson could switch stances on you. He's got decent variety. He's got some pop in his hands, even though I don't think he's got the most power in his strikes. He could fight at a high pace. Swanson's a very tested guy. And so I think that these striking exchanges are going to be fairly close. Again, I favored Chikaze to win them, but I could understand the bettors coming in on Swanson a little bit when the odds were around plus 160 on most books early on in the week, because I do think that this is a fairly competitive fight. And while I don't think it's fair to count on Swanson to go out here and shoot takedowns just because he hasn't shown the most willingness to, I think he could maybe try. The last time he really like went for takedowns often was against, Artem Lobov. He landed 2, and I know that was in 2017. But we've seen it more than once with Chikaze. Like I'm not particularly sold on his defensive grappling. It says 68% per UFCstats.com, but again, that Austin Springer fight was in 2018. Again, I know he's improved since. I just don't know how much. And it's a liability that I like to see addressed in his game nonetheless with more consistency. Swanson did really land. He did technically land a takedown against Pineda in that last fight, but he didn't really truly, shoot it on a double leg or anything like that. He more so persistently wrestled against Lobov, like we talked about, and even against Choi. So maybe Swanson and his camp see on tape that that's where you want to exploit the kickboxer in Chikaze, try and go for takedowns. Maybe he could do something in top position on the ground. Swanson hasn't shown to be the most dangerous submission grappler, but he's got a top control wrestling path to victory nonetheless if he wants. So we'll see how it shakes out. As far as the prediction goes, I'm going to pick Chikaze, but this is a stout test for him. Debatably his toughest test in the UFC thus far. Next fight, we got Luanna Panero taking on Randa Marcos. We got Panero sits as the favorite. She could be had anywhere between -160 and -185. The comeback on Marcos could be had anywhere between +130 and +150. Interesting fight. I am always hesitant with fighters that come into the UFC and they're just basically getting first round knockouts all the time, and like that's the vast majority of their resume, just because I don't know how they're going to fare in a fight that gets extended against better level of opposition. It just is enough for me to not want to bet them. And again, that's my philosophy. Not saying it's the right or wrong way to go about it. I'm just trying to justify why I do it. And so she's a girl, a woman who has a judo base, very good judo pedigree, black belt, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. And she seems to be a dangerous and aggressive and improving striker. But I just don't think she's the most technical fighter, at least yet. A lot of her takedowns, she's trying to muscle the opposition down with like upper body strength. Her striking is just pretty one-dimensional. She'll throw some straight punches. She'll stick and move on the outside. She'll throw some kicks occasionally, but she's not, like on her Contender Series fight, for instance. I mean, that finish was seemingly out of nowhere. She just blitzed randomly and then just got a stoppage. Like, we've seen it time and time again. That only works so many times, unless you're like a heavyweight or something like that. Which, again, it tells me she's got power, and I admire her aggression. I just don't think that that's the most reliable path to victory for her should she move up her ranks in the UFC. Maybe that gets her a win here, but it's not something that I want to count on. And so she's just not very tested. I watched her fight that went 3 rounds. It was just a very lackluster fight. There just wasn't much going on there. They're very low output on both sides. She went for a few takedowns, but despite the judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu accolade, she just doesn't often look for the takedown. And so that's kind of a concern just in general. She doesn't want to play to her strengths. And again, I think her striking is getting better, but she seems to be, at least on paper, a better grappler than she is a striker. But yet she's not, using it with consistency, right? She just doesn't seem to have a very process-oriented game. And maybe that improves as she, gains more experience. She's a young lady. This is her UFC debut. There is reason to be optimistic about her future, but I would like to see her tested a bit more. Randa Marcos, on the other hand, is just a fighter that has been very, very tested. With a loss here, maybe she is no longer with the promotion. I don't know. It's been a few in a row. She's obviously been much more tested. She's shown to be very tough. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt is Marcos. She seems to excel as a grappler. I don't know how the grappling dynamic is going to work out here. Again, there's just very scarce footage of Panero actually grappling in her MMA fights. Like she's got some submissions, but it's not like she's just taking down the opposition, passing their guard with consistency, and then getting a stoppage on the ground. It's more so just like she's rolling for an armbar or something like that. She just happens to get into a scramble. So it's a fight, again, as you could guess, I want nothing to do with from a betting perspective. Marcos on the feet, her volume isn't the most reliable either. She's not particularly the most technical or dangerous. So Panero might be able to best her just based on aggression and power. But I just think that Marcos is a bit more composed. I'm actually going to side here with Marcos just because she is more tested. We have seen her go 3 rounds more than once against better level of opposition. And maybe I'm totally wrong on this pick, but it's not something that I want to bet on. I wouldn't be surprised to see Panero win. You know, her career trajectory is pointing up, whereas Marcos is, again, you know, she's maybe this is her last fight. I don't know. But I'm going to pick her to win nonetheless. If I'm wrong on this pick, that's okay. It happens to me all the time. But I just am going to side with the fighter that is more tested, that we've seen a bit more. So we'll see how it shakes out. I hope they both look good. Dominic Reyes and Yuri Prochazka, the main event, right? Light heavyweight fight. This is very interesting, right? Because like Prochazka in some respects looked amazing in that UFC debut against Ozdemir, right? He was so much faster than Ozdemir. He was a longer fighter. He had 5 inches of reach. He was getting off on his combos beautifully, you know, pushing Ozdemir back, but he was flaunting a lot. He was showboating a lot in there. Yeah, I know that he's a bit of a showman and that sort of thing, but I would prefer him not do that, because it would be very unfortunate if he's just, you know, because I do think he's a very great talent, but if he just loses a fight because he beats himself by just showboating, right? And he just happens to get caught with something, and you don't want him to end up on one of those karma fighter videos, right? I don't want anybody to end up on one of those videos, but that could happen. He, you know, just got hit a lot against Ozdemir. Ozdemir actually outstrike him 41-33 on the numbers per UFCstats.com and almost knocked him out. Go back and watch round 1. Yuri's legs buckled there. He almost went down more than once, right? So, and he has been knocked out once professionally against King Mo. It was a while ago. Shout out to King Mo. That's the second time I mentioned him in this podcast. He's the man. But, you know, this is a fight where I wouldn't be shocked to see him, you know, get knocked out, even though I've seen, you know, he's generally shown to be durable over a large sample size. Again, he was almost knocked out by Ozdemir, and Reyes is a very dangerous guy that could, assuming he's at his best and assuming, you know, that the John Jones and Jan Blachowicz losses haven't gotten to him, could really match the speed and athleticism of Prochazka, which I think is important because, like we talked about, I think Ozdemir could have won that fight, and he still almost did, despite being the slower, less athletic fighter, because Yuri was faster than him, and he was able to be the longer fighter, leverage that length, get off on his combos, and just land the more meaningful shots, even though Ozdemir landed less than him. You know, he went low with a low kick and then came up high, rocked Ozdemir with the head kick. It was disguised beautifully, and then he was able to finish Ozdemir off near the fence to knock him out cold. And that's a very impressive knockout win, because prior to that, Ozdemir had never been knocked out. Well, he got knocked out by Cormier on the ground by TKO, but, you know, knocked out from a striking exchange, if you know what I mean. So Prochazka, I think, has enough power to hurt Reyes. You know, we saw Reyes rocked and knocked down by Blachowicz. He's another one of these guys I wonder about, you know, first knockout loss. What does his chin look like going forward? I don't know. It's more so theory. But Prochazka is going to come out hot, I think, like a confident fighter that he is. The guy's got a very accomplished Muay Thai base. And I think that, you know, the momentum swing could help him in the early going. I actually just trust Reyes a bit more, because even though I have my concerns about, you know, just kind of like the letdown of, again, 2 title fights in a row, he loses both, and he just didn't particularly look great against Jan. He got kind of, you know, reckless, you know, impatient fighting on the outside and just kind of blitzed Jan. And Jan was able to counter him and rock him and knock him down and out, right? But Reyes, I think, has more variety as a striker. I think that Yuri's more technical with his punches. They're just cleaner. But Reyes, you know, he'll work the legs, he'll work the body, he'll work the head with kicks and punches, whereas Prochazka is pretty much a headhunter. So I actually like that Reyes has that going for him. And he's also just much more tested at the UFC level. Again, Prochazka is very, very experienced. The guy has around 30 pro fights. He's been fighting a lot in Ryzen, and he seemingly is in the prime of his career, around 30 years of age. But Reyes has been tested against, you know, the best of the best in the UFC, you know, against John Jones, against Ozdemir, who Prochazka fought, against Blachowicz. So he's definitely the more tested guy. Do I want to bet Reyes at this line? No. Again, I wouldn't be shocked if Prochazka knocked him out. Again, Prochazka is going to come out confident. He's going to come out hot. And if Reyes is not ready for that, I wouldn't be shocked to see Prochazka get another knockout here. I really wouldn't. The guy's shown to hurt durable fighters. He's shown to be very fast. He can be a bit longer in terms of reach against Reyes. It's not going to be as significant of a margin as it was against Ozdemir, but a 3-inch reach advantage nonetheless. And it's just kind of, where is Reyes at, right? Again, I just trust him a bit more. I think that, again, Prochazka throws the cleaner punches, but Reyes is better variety with working the legs, working the body, and working the head. So official prediction is going to be Dominic Reyes. I'm going to pick him to win by TKO. That'll do it for the stream. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate every single one of you. If you do like this video, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. If you haven't already to this channel, please feel free to hit the like button. Please feel free to leave a nice comment below. I want to wish every single one of you the best. Good luck on your bets for the event, and have a nice day.